Alright, so in this unit, I want to focus in on form. Okay, so form and form change. So we have to build base meshes and create those base meshes into a sculptable form that we can bring in Mudbox and put together a study. Okay, so one of the assignments is create a study. So what is a study? Well, in traditional art terms, a study is just a piece of the whole. It's not the whole. It's a small representation that can be finished and learned from. Okay? Oftentimes I see students developing a whole character or developing a whole, just I call them Norwal projects, because really a student's understanding of the tools haven't been really set in stone yet. So what happens is they are not only learning about anatomy, but they're learning how to use the tools. You have to learn the tools, understand how they work, before you can really go all the way and develop a whole character, I would say. So studies are a really nice way to bring students down to a smaller area of focus. In this case, I really like the form change of this. Okay, it's just something small, it needs a base mesh, and it can be sculpted. I really like this. This is really nice. I would say this is a good idea too. You can learn a lot from just the back leg and how it's formed with the musculature, and there's a lot of sculpting here too. So what we're going to do is build a base mesh, and I think I like this a little bit better, and I like both. So I don't know. Basically, what I'm going to do is just kind of set this aside to my secondary monitor. And start showing you the advantage of setting up kind of a workflow for modeling. Not only sculpting in Mudbox, but modeling is just as important. Because Mudbox really doesn't have an underlying ability to create new forms very easily. Okay, so I've had hotkeys set up. One is Control E. Control E allows you to extrude. Okay. And I always look at these forms as very simple things like cylinders and spheres. That's all I see is cylinders and spheres now. Okay, I'm on a side view here. So before I get into the cylinder or sphere, I try to work out like a silhouette via a box. Just like that. And this would represent something like this right here. So look for the silhouette. Try, one of the things that they do for, artists that are learning how to oil paint or just paint is look for, not all the detail, but they teach students how to blur their vision a little bit and see past the detail to the overall form. And that's very super powerful to learn that way. So look for the overall silhouette of it rather than these little tiny nodules and stuff like that. Now, I firmly believe in having forms separated too. In some modeling classes, they teach you that everything must be interconnected with it. That is absolutely false. The days of making a character that is all one chunk of 3D digital matter is over. Absolutely over. Maybe in the 80s or 90s, but not now. Alright, another thing I do all the time is 3 and 1. Okay, just to preview it, not to abide by it, but just to kind of see what's going to happen when I hit 3 on a keyboard. Okay, because that represents the next level of sculpt. I have Control R set for insert edge loop tool. That's a really nice shortcut to have. I'm trying to slow my mind as far as I can down. It's just one of those things when you see these done, usually they're speed sculpts, and I hate those things to learn from. They are impossible to kind of try to pick out what is in the head of the artist. Watching a speed sculpt is pretty brutal. Okay, so that's good. And you don't have to get too close to the representation of the form just yet, because we have magical tools like the grab tool, which is in Mudbox only. Now notice here, I can't move this way very easy. I have to kind of move counter to that because of this. Just one of the things that I like to show is we have local and normal. Okay. Now if I use normal and average, now I can pull this form in the direction that I have it in now. So that's a really nice thing. I have hotkeys set up for Control 1, 3, and 7 to hop into side, top, and front. These hotkeys, I'll give you the preferences for them. They're in the actual show notes. And what you could do is you go to Documents, and then under Maya, you go into your 2014, and you would paste over the top of these. And in it, you have a couple new files, which is user hotkeys and user preferences. and you'll find that there's a few scripts that I wrote for doing the Control 1, 3, and 7 on the keyboard. I try to encourage students to learn a little bit about open source. I find that we get often hung up on commercial software because schools really push commercial software. But the problem with being a student is once you get off the commercial software and get into the real world, you're going to find that you wouldn't be able to afford the commercial software right away. So open source is just amazing that way. That's why the shortcut keys are set to where they're at. Those are the same shortcut keys used for a program called Blender, which I love. Love using Blender over Maya any day of the week. The only reason I'm using Maya right now is the fact that the students are taught in Maya and the school supports Maya. So it's just one of those things I could go outside the box and say, hey, Blender is better sometimes. Another thing is with Maya and Mudbox, they're kind of married to each other. So I'm kind of torn. I can hit the magical send to Blender button and I'm okay with life. Alright, and we certainly don't have to finish all the forms out right now. Now, here's the next thing I want to look at is these are cylinders. So you can see that this one I just kind of made into one giant form because really that is one. It's a whole bunch of little ones, but we don't want to think about sculpting that way. We're also looking at things like, well, there's a hole right here. Well, in sculpting land, we couldn't put a hole there. We could, but we'd have to make two separate forms. And I don't want to go there either. I want to turn it more into a sculpt. Okay, so I finished from here to here. Now we need to kind of look at, okay, I see a ball and I see a cylinder. I see a ball and I see a cylinder. Okay. Anytime I see a cylinder, I take the top part of this and hit Control E to extrude it, and then off click. Anytime I see a ball, well, I don't do much of anything, because you can now see that this is a cylinder and this could be potentially a ball. And then this I see as just a ball that's outstretched. Now I have a ball on this end and more of a cylinder approach on the other end. So anytime I see a ball, I just go Control R, and I'll put an edge loop in there, another edge loop, and then I'll puff that out. 3 on the keyboard equals ball. I know this seems like, I don't know, it feels like one of those things that you teach them at a very elementary age of drawing. But I also have students that never took any kind of art class sometimes. And I teach during the day design. And I have high school students that are juniors and seniors along with college students at night. And juniors and seniors in high school, you would be surprised at how many schools have eliminated their art program, leaving these students to nowhere to go. Right here, I see a cylinder, and then I see an abstract form. So this is a very rare occasion where I go like this, Control E, come off that. There we go. And if I want a tighter approach to that, Control E again. So altogether, I have something like this. And now we can move these forms around in their smoothed form. Like that. And I think there's one more that I want to kind of add to the mix. I do like this. I'll put it there as an option though. And I'm just going to leave it as a sphere to sculpt with. Okay, so there's a small example on how to think about forms. Now, in the next video, we'll take it into Mudbox and kind of bounce it around a little bit. Another thing I have to do is find the other side and the front version of this. So think about research, very important. I have to kind of look for that anatomy. If I don't have it at hand, I have to search for it via image. So we'll look at that in the next video.